Howdy, I'm Cowboy with DIY Ready. Today we're going to build a motion control camera for your own yard, so you got your security camera for your house or for your safe room without spending all that money on an expensive setup. Let me show you how this thing works. We've got our pan mode here and we've got our tilt right here, just based off of moving these little cable controlled remotes. Let's take it outside, see how it really works. Is there anybody out there? They coming to take my chickens? After my victory garden? So the first step in building your own remote control security camera is to go to DIYready.com and download the instructions and blueprints. Go ahead and take those, pre-cut your lumber and pre-drill the holes, and then get ready for some fun. So the first steps in our actual assembly process is going to be to build the pan function of our motion control base. So I'm going to take my baseboard here, take one of my Lazy Susans. I'm going to take my two boards that I've cut and pre-drilled for the pan function. I'm going to take two angle brackets and my number 10 1/2-inch screws here. I'm going to start by sliding my base off to the side here. Going to take my baseboard here. I'm going to mount the Lazy Susan to it. I'm going to be sure that I line up with my previously drilled screw holes here. Go ahead and attach this to the board. I'm going to take this guy and flip him up on his side. I'm going to attach two of my angle brackets here. These are going to hold our upright up, keep it nice and firm. Place our upright on. Get it screwed together. Get a couple screws started in it. Sometimes it's easier just to flip it over on its side like this. If you happen to have one around, use your screw gun. And the next step is going to be to go ahead and attach this to our baseboard. Line this up with our pre-drilled holes. Rotate it. Get 4 screws in the base of that, and this completes our pan function. Be sure all your screws are nice and tight, everything's straight, and your vertical's upright. And we'll move on to the next step, which will be putting our tilt function in. Alright, so in this step, we're actually going to take and put together our tilt function for the camera. So I've pre-cut these blocks of wood here. They'll match your diagram. This one is 8 inches by 6 1/4 inches. The base piece for the camera is 3 1/2 inches by 6 1/4 inches. We've got our 3/4 inch screws here, or actually these are 1/2 inch number 10 screws right here, and we've got 2 angle brackets. So we'll start by attaching the Lazy Susan to this board. I've actually already kind of notched the corner of this one off to make room for when we turn to not hit our cable. Take and pick a side. Go ahead and attach your screws to the sideboard of our tilt function. Those 3 all line up. We'll flip it over now. Now I've taken and measured out my sideboard here, and I've actually measured it out so that I come down to the center point of the Lazy Susan. This is very important to be around the pivot point and put this board around the pivot point. And I've left 1 inch above the Lazy Susan to give me a place to connect my cables to later on. So I'll go ahead and place this board, put a couple angle brackets on it here first, using my 1/2 inch number 10 screws once again. Place it on top of my sideboard here. It's nice and firm now. And last but not least, I'm going to take and attach it to this side right here. Go ahead and tilt your Lazy Susan to the side a little bit so you got access to these screws. now we've got our tilt function. This provides the up and downward movement of the camera. All right, in this next step, we're going to go ahead and prepare our motion base. Now that we've got it all mounted up and everything's spinning nice, we're going to go ahead and take and mount the eye screws that we're going to use to control this with our cables. So we've got a little piece of wood that's going to be our standoff and raise us up about level with the wood on top of the Susan here. And I've taken pre-drilled this as per the diagram. I'm going to go ahead and place that on the board here, on our baseboard. I'm going to attach it with 3 of our 3/4 inch number 10 screws. Sure, and go ahead and snug these down good. And once that's done, for each cable, I'm going to select one of the medium screw eyes and 2 of the small ones. Put the other ones here to the side. So I'm going to start in my board over here. This is going to be for our left turn. I'm going to go ahead and screw the large eye and the hole towards the back that we've pre-drilled. I'm going to be sure and screw it all the way down, nice and close to the board. This is going to be the one that supports our cable housing and keeps it in position. I'm going to take one of the small eyes and I'm going to screw that in the hole that goes directly in front of that. This is going to function as our cable housing stop. And then the third small screw, I'm going to screw into the proper position on our motion base. This is the one that the cable itself is actually going to run through and tie to move the board around. Take and screw that all the way down. Go ahead and take and complete the same step for your right turn movement now, and in the appropriate holes for your tilt mode for your up and down. Once we do that, we'll move on to the next step. So now that we've got all our eye screws in the board set up like the diagram shows, we're finished with that, we're ready to actually take and run our cables. So I've got 4 cables of equal length over here, and I've got 4 cable housings of equal length. We'll start by taking a single cable housing, separating it out of the pile, getting it on the ready. We're going to double check the ends of it, make sure that they're opened up by using a small Phillips screwdriver, and putting it in and just kind of moving it around in the housing a little bit, making sure that the hole's open and clear. We want our cables hanging up. We'll do that on both ends. All right, that looks good. So I'm going to pull out, take one of my cables here. Now, if you happen to be able to get the bicycle cables that already have one end on them, then we'll have that. If not, then you'll have to put one more of the drum connectors on the end. I'm going to go ahead and run the cable in line here. We're going to do our right and left. Be careful not to kink the cable. We'll take and slide first through this eye screw here. And we'll come through the corresponding eye screws on the same side. So now we've run it through all 3. We'll pull it up tight. We'll take our cable housing, being careful when inserting that, not to fray the cable end. Just go ahead and feed your cable all the way into the housing. Until it pops out the end there. Go ahead and slide it, and we'll tighten it up. Put it in place so that you're square still with the device. Then move to the other side. Once again, grab one more cable. Being careful not to fray the end. Through the eye screw on this side. These 2 eye screws on this side, and pull it through. Get a fresh cable housing. Check the ends. Very nice and opened up. Now we've got both ends through and connected. We'll even the two of them up. Make sure they're nice and straight, and we'll clip off the cable ends to match on each side. Careful not to fray your cable ends. After you complete this step, go ahead and do the same thing for your tilt function for the two cables for it. Alright, so now this is how your motion base should look with the cables all connected. You've got all your cable housings running up and tight against the cable stop, the eye screw, the smaller one. You got your cables run through the small eye on here. Everything's taut. You've got them together in pairs. You got plenty of cable coming out each end. You go ahead and test your left and right here. They're paired together and they're working right. Yeah, and then we've got our up and our down cables. Those are both tight and working in function with each other. We'll level both of our axes out. Now we're ready to move on to building our control board. So in this step, we're going to actually take and assemble our control board. Now I've already taken and pre-cut all of my pieces and assembled the parts that I'm going to need for this. You're going to find all this on a list on DIYready.com in association to this product. So follow that link and print that out. I'm going to go ahead and take the first board here and put it on our base piece. I've already taken and pre-drilled the holes. I'm going to match it up, flip it over. This is going to be at the end. It's going to be our standoff for the cable holding board. I'm going to flip it over. Just put 2 screws in the back of it. I'm going to level it up here. I'm going to get 2 of my 3/4 inch number 10 screws. Get them in. Take it and flip it over. And we're going to screw the top board in. In this one, I'm actually going to use 2 of my longer screws, my 1¼ inch number 10 screws. Then in each position for each cable, I'm going to go ahead and put in 1 small eye screw at this side of the board, side that my controller is going to be on. These act as the cable housing stops. I'm going to screw them down as close to the board as I can. Then I'm going to screw one of the medium eye screws in right behind that in line. Once again, screw that down to the board as close as possible. Make sure both the eyes are in line. Then I'm ready to start looking at attaching my actual controls. So I'm going to flip my board over. Actually, I take this first upright, and I've marked out the center of the board, and I've marked my 2 centers as per the diagram on the website. I'm going to go ahead and put a block down in the center. I'm going to use one of the short screws initially to hold it in place. I've made marks on all these just to square that block up with the base. Now I can go ahead and flip it over and screw 2 of these 3/4 inch screws into the base through the 1/2 inch plywood. That done, back this long screw back out. And take 2 of my flat washers that are going to act as spacers. Lay them down directly over that hole. Go ahead and take one of my controllers. Run the screw back down through it. Centered right back in that hole. There. And then I'm going to tighten it down to where it's snug. And then I'm going to back it off a 1/2 turn. Now I've got an easy to move controller. I'm going to go ahead and take 2 more of the small eye screws. Put 1 on each end. I'm going to tighten them down as close as I can to the surface of the wood. And I'll run my cables once I get them through here to select as a cable stop. Run the cable in through here, and I'll put another drum on the end, and that'll be done. So go ahead and complete the other side, the same as we do this side, and we'll move on to the next step. So now that we've got all 4 of our cables wired and attached, we're going to go ahead and connect them to our control board that we've built. So we're going to select a pair of cables. Right now I'm going to do the ones for the tilt function. I've got 2 of the cables set up. I've got them pulled taut within their sheaths. I've got an even amount of cable coming out and a long enough amount of cable to go from the standoffs and through to connect to the actual remote control. That being said, I decide which one, or figure out which one is up and which one's down, and what direction I want to turn to go up and which one I want to go down. Not quite as important as your left and right, putting them in the right position, but choose one. So go ahead and take your cable. You'll string it through the larger eye screw and then through the smaller. Pull it up taut. Then insert the cable through the smaller eye screw. Take one of your cable connectors or barrel connectors. Insert your cable through it. Slide it up. Keep your control nice and straight. Once again, making sure that everything's taut. Making sure that your control here or your motion table is actually vertical and straight in a plane. And then we'll finger tight the screw on this. Leave it as it is. We'll pull the other side for the downward movement. slide it in on the other side through both the eye screws. Back through this one. Cable connector on this side. Pull everything taut. Make sure everything's straight and taut in here on both sides. Finger tight. We can go ahead and tighten these up with a screwdriver. I recommend testing this now carefully, making sure you've got the motion that you want from side to side. We've got a little bit of slop in this side over here, so I'm going to go ahead and take that slop out. Need to tighten it up just a little bit. And when I feel good about that, I'm going to go ahead and grab my drum connector with a pair of pliers on the bottom side and finish tightening it up. Just snug it a little bit there. Do that on both of them. Double check it. We've got the full range of motion. We're ready to move on to the right and the left one. Get this knocked out, we'll proceed to the next step. So now we've got all our cables connected in the proper sequence and in the proper pairs, where we've got our up and down movement or our tilt. We've got our right and left cables or our pan correctly connected to our board and turning in the right direction. We've tightened up our cables, they're secure, there's not much if any slack in between the two of them. The last thing we have to do now is just to reconnect our camera to our base that we've made and hook the camera up to the TV. So we'll just take and use the bolt that we got earlier, put it up through the bottom. It's easiest to get the cord attached on the camera first most of the time. We've got that. We use our extension cable with our little double female ends. Go ahead and match our colors. Red to red, white to white, yellow to yellow. We got sound and video coming in for all of this. And then just plug them into the back of the TV set. Into the appropriate color codes. Turn on your TV. Turn on your camera. Tighten up your bolt. And you're ready to roll. And there you have it. That's how you build your own remote controlled security camera. If you'd like to see more videos on this or things like it, go to DIYready.com. I'm Cowboy. Have a great day.